Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Uranus making a square opposition or inconjunct aspect to one's natal Pluto. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve Uranus, it can be about freedom, independence, friendships, groups, clubs, organizations, disruptions, unanticipated events, aspirations, and goals. Now, when this transit of Uranus is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Pluto. Now, when I say, I want to elaborate on that. When I say basically adverse aspect, well, of course, the squares and opposition aspects in astrology are adverse and negative. Now, when you have an inconjunct aspects are neutral, but neutral aspects can have good and bad qualities to them. And also coupled with the fact that an inconjunct can often require an adjustment or a transition, and that of course can cause some tension and exasperation. So collectively, basically, I see this as an adverse aspect. And the thing is, when you have transit Uranus, basically making the adverse aspect to one's natal Pluto, well, it may manifest in freedom, independence, friendships, groups, clubs, organizations, disruptions, unanticipated events, aspirations, and goals. These things may conflict with power in your life, having maybe control over something in your life. You might be trying to gain some kind of power in your career, as an example, or just in being, like, say if you have Pluto in the second house, it might be being like self-sufficient or being able to generate your own money. And the thing is, it might be harder to concentrate on issues connected with this, right? This transit may even indicate power struggles with friends at this time, and issues over control and power if you're in a shared resources situation with a friend at this time. For example, you're both staying in the same place, and one may be trying to have more control over what goes on there. It can also be too, remember that Pluto is also connected with figurative death, obliteration, and ending something. It can be where maybe there's difficulty in trying to end maybe a friendship or some kind of, maybe it's a goal or an aspiration you have that maybe you might be obsessed with, but it's not really getting you anywhere. And it might be something where you may be trying to end it, but it might be more difficult at this time in order to do so. And since Pluto is also connected with, since Uranus is also connected with independence and freedom, it may be difficulty in trying to just maybe end issues with that at this time. If you're lacking freedom in your life, as an example, could also be too when, Pluto is also associated with death. So this might be a time where if somebody has died recently in your life, somebody that was prominent in your life scheme, and you had, it could be where pursuing goals and aspirations may be more difficult due to the death at this time, or maybe matters with friendships are harder to actually maintain. If there's any activities that you were going to do with friends at this time, a death might be conflicting with it. It could be a situation where if you're experiencing some unanticipated event in your life or some disruption in your life, somehow it might actually exacerbate an issue you may have in dealing with perhaps a recent death in your life. Now, Pluto is also connected with making a major change and transformation. So at this time, when you're trying to do so, if you're involved in some group or club or organization, that might challenge this at this time. It might be a situation too, when you have this transit, keep in mind Pluto is connected with crime and corruption, So you're talking about basically an adverse aspect. Maybe there's some situation with a cyber crime you're dealing with at this time, or something with computers or electronic um, type of crime. Maybe in some cases, maybe even a friend is involved in some criminal activity. Uh, it may be, something to, when you look at this, I mean, Pluto is connected with rebirth and regeneration. So if you're trying to bring something back or resurrect, like say a career, for example, or some job you had, or whether it might be your life in general, matters with friendships might conflict with this if you're involved in some group, or say, I mean, if you're in some sports league or something, even if it's on a recreational level, these things might be more difficult at this time to deal with, because you might be trying to bring something back, to resurrect something in your own life at this time. Say if the natal Pluto is in the 7th house, it may be a marriage partner, a significant other. And another thing too, anatomically speaking, Pluto is connected with the prostate, the colon, and the bladder. So it may be a time where you may be having difficulty doing Uranus-related things, whether it could be computers or astrology or electronics, just your general goals and aspirations. You may be, if you're an innovator, those things may be harder, it may be harder to innovate at this time. If you're dealing with any issues with the prostate, colon, or bladder, especially if this was an existing issue prior to this transit. Now, Pluto is also connected with shared resources. So it might be a time where you might be dealing with some shocking or surprising thing in connection with the shared resources scenario or situation at this time. That might come about very unexpectedly. Pluto is also associated with moral, emotional, and monetary support. So at this time, those things, you might be experiencing more fluctuations with that. It might be where support may be more erratic and sporadic. You might get it at one moment, then the next moment you may not get it. Friendships might be harder to receive any support from them at this time, or may be difficult for you to give support at this time to them more so than usual. Now, another way this transit may manifest, it could be that friendships, again, may conflict with you making a major change or transformation. Say if the natal Pluto is in the 5th house as an example, it could be some matter that's associated with a lover, with a child at this time. And also, too, another way this transit may be expressed, you may be dealing with disruptions that might challenge your control over some situation. Let's say, for example, if you have your natal Pluto in the 10th house, it could be control in connection with a business or a career at this time, and maybe there's some unanticipated event, some disruption in your life that's making it harder for you to maintain that control in a business, in a career-related matter at this time. Now, another thing too, again, I'll reiterate what I said previously. Now, there may be a greater propensity, say for cyber crime or some kind of electronic computer crime at this time, more so than usual. Uranus is connected with the cyber world, with computers, with electronics. Pluto is associated with crime and corruption. So there might be a greater propensity for something like this to happen at this time, and more so than usual. It can be a time too where you look at, and also Pluto is connected with viruses, and Uranus being associated with computers, there may be a greater proclivity toward getting some kind of virus on the computer at this time. So it's a time, I mean, you're supposed to do this anyway, regardless of transits, but perhaps especially this time, when you have this transit, make sure your computer is really protected, because it might be more susceptible to getting some kind of virus that may corrupt it. So anyway, hold on a moment, people. Anyway, another way this transit may be expressed, it could be where instability may adversely affect something you're trying to end. Again, Pluto's connected not just with literal death, but it's about obliteration, figurative deaths, putting something to an end. Say if the natal Pluto's in the 12th house, it could be some kind of fear or addiction you're trying to eradicate or end at this time. Also to support, which is connected with Pluto, whether it might be moral, emotional, monetary support, though that may be more erratic and sporadic at this time. And also too, this can increase a propensity for intermittent pain, perhaps in the groin, the private sector at this time, because though that is what is, because Pluto can be connected with that, or it could be spasms or twitches, uncomfortable sensations there at this time, especially if you had this problem previously. It might be intensified during this transit. It could also be where you may experience unexpected surprises with taxes, insurance matters, a death, something with an inheritance or support, or something with the shared resources situation. Surprise, considering it's an adverse aspect, likely something, I would say it would be something likely negative or adverse as far as surprises go. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.